Ingraham did a fascinating segment where three really interesting things happened. In the first half, she decides to argue that Martin Luther King Jr. would oppose the Democrats today because they protest too much. And then she has on Alveda King, who is Martin Luther King Jr.'s niece, and she decides to argue that Martin Luther King Jr. was a capitalist. And then out of nowhere, Laura Ingraham totally schools Alveda King and proves that Martin Luther King Jr. was a democratic socialist. It was such a fascinating segment. I want to show you guys. Take a look.
We have already seen a black president. We've already seen a black first family. Now we want to know what it is going to mean. Symbolism is not enough now. It's substance.
Word.
And if there's no substance, then we've gotten over the aura of the first.
Now, those comments, along with others at the National Action Network, were dripping with kind of grievance. They led me to pose this question yesterday. Today is the anniversary of the assassination of the Reverend Martin Luther King Jr. I was thinking, like, if he were alive today, I wonder what he'd think about such dismissive comments and about a Democrat Party that believes it can regain power by living in a constant state of protest or racial hatred and denial. Now, for highlighting how the manufactured outrage by some of the social justice warriors is creating racial division and hatred, I was attacked. I was just asking a question. Well, kind of in the response to proving my point, aren't they? They're not interested in a real conversation about improving the lives of real people, the state of the economy for African Americans in this country, talking about criminal justice reform, school choice, all the things that conservatives love, the life issue. Instead, they attempt to demonize anyone who rejects divisive, negative way of thinking. Well, they want to shut down speech. They don't believe in open dialogue. Joining me now is a woman who does, Alveda King, niece of Martin Luther King Jr. Alveda has the type of stuff you're seeing from Jesse Jackson and all the Democrats, one after the other, kind of bowing down to his, his identity over the last few days. I just raised the question because it's so negative. It's almost like even Obama's presidency was kind of dismissed by Al Sharpton saying, yeah, he did some good things, but now it's on to the real work.
Isn't that amazing that Al Sharpton would say that? He forgets many things quickly. I think he forgot that Martin Luther King Jr. was a prophet. I think Jesse Jackson forgot that too. And in the spirit of Jesus Christ, it sounds like socialism, I guess, to say feed the poor and take care of the hungry. But that's the perspective of Martin Luther King in a prophetic voice, not a political voice. Yeah, so some of your relatives, you guys were tweeting back at each other, intra-family conversations about this. But you never know what anyone would think. It would be fun to think what Thomas Jefferson would think. But it is... And go back, I was watching a lot of his speeches before the show and going back and watching. And he was sounding more favorable to socialism and socialist ideals. I want to read part of one of his speeches. I think we have the full screen when he talked about socialism. Well, this was a description of him, but Dr. King was anti-war, anti-capitalism, and pro-socialism. He saw capitalism as exploitative by nature, an economic structure that bred poverty and injustice. He spoke of his desire to fundamentally change society several times into a democratic form of socialism, which the workers collectively own and direct profit from the businesses in which they work. He saw capitalism as a method of organization that produced an extremely wealthy upper class, but left huge numbers in dire poverty. That was Garrett Griffin's book. But the actual speeches from King, where he discussed the need to fundamentally restructure the economic system in the United States. So maybe, the push towards socialism kind of is in the tradition of King? Well, but that's not exactly socialism, because in restructuring that system, he would want to see African Americans today own land, own property, work, contribute to society. So he would not necessarily have supported just handouts without hand up and equipping people to fish forever rather than having to fish for a day. So that's why I say his socialism was more mindful of Christ rather than a political structure or system. But as far as perpetual protest, he was sowing hope, seeds of hope. One day this will end and we'll all have something together. That's the Martin Luther King Jr. that I actually know.
And also working with people in both parties, which he knew you had to do, which I also think is sad. In the civil rights movement today, it's only, you didn't have a lot of diversity.
It has to be either or, and if you're an African American, everybody just insists that you need to be a Democrat, and that's not really true. Martin Luther King Jr. was an independent. His dad started out as a Republican, but he was an independent, and people don't remember that either. And so that's why when Sharpton just dismisses it and forgets, well, we can't forget. If we forget our history, we'll repeat the bad part, but then we'll forget to do the good part over again.
Alveda, and also, of course, the pro-life community you do so much great work for. That's another conversation that just isn't had.
Civil rights for the unborn.
Not had.
And I'm so glad to see more and more being done. And we really need to end racism, abortion, and infanticide from my perspective.
Well, and that's something that, of course, as you call him, Daddy King, is in his course.
He was always pro-life. Daddy King from life. From birth until when he left the planet, supported life. Yeah.
Alveda King, so great to have you. Sorry if I caused.
That was such a fascinating segment. Like, I've never seen anything like that before from Laura Ingraham, because she started off as the typical Laura Ingraham, but somewhere in the middle there, she was saying things that were totally factually correct. And I was like, is this Laura? So, like, understand that Laura Ingraham is dumb, but she just made Alveda King look even dumber. That's amazing, guys. That's amazing. Like, literally. Let me break this down real quick. There were 3 parts of this segment that were just really, really interesting. First off, Laura Ingraham was talking about how she thought it was ridiculous that all the Democrats went up against her for just simply asking a question. But what she doesn't understand is that her question has presuppositions that are already false. So, for example, well, in this example, I should say, Laura Ingraham was arguing that she was asking a question, what would MLK do if he saw all the Democrats today just perpetually protesting? That presupposes that Democrats are consistently protesting. But that's misunderstanding what Democrats are doing. That's a presupposition that, in a sense, is mischaracterizing Democrats. Because a lot of Democrats, especially the establishment Democrats, are not protesting. They're not trying to be progressives. And so there's a difference between the Democrats and the progressives. And by the way, Martin Luther King Jr. was the most progressive person in modern American history. He literally progressed America in a social way that was so insane, guys. That moment in history, in American history, has to be probably the most influential moment in all of American history. That was the civil rights movement, the women's rights movement. There was so much progress done in social America that, and MLK Jr. Dr. King deserves a large portion of the credit, at least. He's a progressive by every virtue of that name. Now, that being said, so that's my analysis on the first half of the segment. Then she had Alveda King come on, and she started talking about how, like, isn't Dr. King like a democratic socialist? And Alveda King starts giving these arguments like, no, he's a capitalist. He's a capitalist. And her arguments, Alveda King's arguments, were ridiculous. I'm going to break down them for you, because when you listen to her, it's super easy to go, what is she even talking about? But, like, I want you to really carefully listen to these words, because they're absolutely ridiculous. They're honestly ridiculous. You weren't just, like, not listening. It was that you can't listen because it's word salad. She said, MLK said, feed the hungry and give food end hunger and give food to the hungry, or something like that. But this is prophetic. It's not political. What? So, like, first off, I don't understand when anyone says, like, this is not political. That's a really weird, awkward statement to make, because pretty much everything is political. Almost every single thing is political. Politics is a very general topic, and pretty much everything falls in the category of politics. And so, like, for example, people think like, no, theology is bigger. No, you make your political beliefs based off of your theological beliefs. Oftentimes, it's not the other way around. People don't believe in theology based off of their politics. And so theology imposes on your political beliefs, not the other way around. Therefore, politics is a very, very broad thing. It's incredibly broad. And so for her to say, like, it's not political, that doesn't even make sense. But then she said it's prophetic. So you're saying Dr. King is making prophecy about feeding the hungry? What does that even mean? Like, so first off, prophecy is like basically a prediction that is ordained by God, according to Christians. And so Martin Luther King Jr. is wanting to feed the hungry as prophecy? That doesn't even make any sense. I get it. I cannot wrap my mind around that. There's no words to describe that. And then on top of that, she said he would want to see African Americans today own land, own property, work, contribute to society. So he would not necessarily have supported just handouts without hand-ups. And she went on to say how he wouldn't support socialism. Like that, he's a capitalist, not a socialist. Like that was her whole argument, is that like because he supports owning land, owning property, working, contributing to society, he's not a socialist. Alvita, you understand that socialism is the social ownership of the means of production. Within a socialistic society, you have people owning stuff. It's just everyone has equal outcome. So you still own homes. And I mean, you could have a system where you have public housing rather than private housing that's all equal or whatever. But like, nonetheless, there are two aspects there: working and contributing to society. That's pretty much one of the major pieces of socialism. That's what makes socialism work, is that everyone contributes to society by working. Like, you don't know what you're talking about. You don't even know what socialism is. But then, like, on top of that, she said he would not necessarily have supported just handouts without hand-ups. Martin Luther King Jr. literally supported universal basic income. There's video evidence of it, Alvita, and I challenge you, if you don't believe me, just search up on YouTube, Martin Luther King Jr., universal basic income. I believe if I quote him correctly, he literally says, and therefore, I believe that there should be a universal basic income for all families and all people. If that's not an advocacy for universal basic income, I don't know what is. I don't think you could be more clear if you tried. And then Laura Ingraham pushes back and this is the third thing that was fascinating. Like, Laura Ingraham literally pushed back on Alvita King. Like, what Alvita King was saying was something that Republicans would want to hear. So she was like siding with the typical Fox News viewer. But then Laura Ingraham pushed back anyways. And it's like, what are you doing? You're going against the interest of your Republican far right-winger viewers. But she decides to do it anyways. She's like, nah, there's pretty strong evidence that he is a democratic socialist. And she gave a quote from like 2016 of someone who analyzed Martin Luther King Jr. and basically said, yeah, he's a democratic socialist. And I'm like, whoa, I didn't see that coming. I did not see that coming at all. I did not see that coming. That was interesting. That would have been something that I would say in response to Alvita King. But like, Laura Ingraham did the work for me. I was like, okay, that's really interesting. And then I love Alvita King's response to that. It was, well, listen, MLK Jr., Martin Luther King Jr. was an independent. Oh, so we're good now. He's not a socialist. he's not a progressive or anything. Like, he's just an independent. He's not a Republican per se, but he's not a Democrat. My goodness, no way. No way. He's independent. Yeah, he was registered independent, but he is maybe like underneath Abraham Lincoln, and that's even saying a lot too. I don't know. He might be just the most progressive person in American society. Like, he had to be the most left-leaning person in all of American society. Because at the time, he was advocating for something incredibly extreme. Incredibly extreme. He was arguing for universal basic income when Bernie Sanders was young. Like, he was advocating for something that was incredibly left-leaning. And mind you, I just thought of FDR. FDR might be a little bit more left-wing than, gosh, it's a hard argument, guys. But still, like, to say, like, oh, MLK Jr. is independent, I'm good here. He's not really a progressive or anything like that. Please, come on.